Okay, so picture this. It is 10 p.m. Your brain has been running at 150 miles per hour all day long. You're physically exhausted, but your mind feels like a crowded room where there's five different people just shouting over each other. And in the background, there's a catchy jingle. Picture Ready Tears, get in, get out, get better, which actually, that jingle is kind of ironic because you get in, you sit, you wait, you get called up to pay, you sit back down, get called back, you sit there in the office in the little room, finally get seen by a doctor for 2 minutes. They leave, you wait some more. The nurse comes back in with the final paperwork, and then you leave. Finally. So the get in, get out, get better, that is kind of misleading, but I digress. Let's move forward. But at the end of the day, you want to relax. You want to sit on the couch and you just want to watch a movie, or maybe you actually want to finally get some sleep, but you can't. There's this agonizing, vibrating restlessness in your chest. It's that classic ADHD understimulation, that painful boredom where nothing sounds good. Nothing feels interesting, and your own skin feels like it's just a little bit too tight. So you pull out your vape pen or you light up a joint, you take a hit. Within 3 minutes, the shouting voices in that jingle finally quiet down. Your shoulders drop 3 inches and you sigh and say, thank God, this is the only thing that actually turns my brain off, that makes me feel normal. Well, if you have ADHD, there is a biological reason why that plant makes makes you feel like it's a magic eraser to all of your symptoms. So let's talk about it. This is Wild Focus. All right, welcome back to Wild Focus. This is the place where we do not treat ADHD like some weird, quirky personality trait or a tragic disease. We treat it like the chaotic, beautiful, understimulated sports car engine of a brain that it actually is. And obviously, yes, it's me. I'm your host. And today we are ripping off the band aid on a massive elephant in the community. We're talking about Mary Jane, weed, grass, cannabis, the devil's lettuce, whatever you want to call it. And I promise that I promise you always that I'm going to give the raw, honest truth on this show. So here it is. A staggering number of individuals with ADHD are self medicating with marijuana. In fact, research shows adults with ADHD are about 3 times more likely to use cannabis than neurotypical individuals. And nearly half of all individuals with ADHD end up meeting the criteria for cannabis use disorder at some point. Now, most ADHDers aren't doing it just to party and have fun. They're doing it because they're trying to survive their own minds. But today we're going to dive in deep into the actual peer-reviewed science behind what THC does to executive dysfunctional brains. Obviously, like always, no judgment, no preachy anti-drug commercials from the 90s with the deflated eggs. None of that. Just the real neurobiological truth about why it feels like a fix, why it actually isn't, and what we can do instead. So let's start with the why. Why are ADHDers so drawn to cannabis? To understand that, I think we need to understand the foundational flaw of the ADHD brain. Yes, you guessed it, dopamine, or rather, actually, the tragic lack of it for us. Now, neurotypical brains have a nice, steady functioning baseline stream of dopamine. It's like a well paved highway where cars cruise happily along. Well, dopamine is the chemical that tells your brain, hey, this task is important. Let's feel motivated to do it. And let's feel rewarded when it's done. Our ADHD brains, our dopamine highway is an absolute construction zone, much like Michigan highways in the summer. If you're from Michigan, you'll probably appreciate that and fully understand what I mean. But we have fewer dopamine transporter proteins. Okay. So our baseline dopamine activity is chronically low already. Now, this manifests as chronic painful boredom and inability to start tasks, emotional flatness, and an agonizing craving for intensity. We are constantly on a scavenger hunt for a chemical spike just to feel normal. Enter THC. When you smoke or ingest cannabis, the THC floods your system that is directly next to your dopamine pathways. All right. The THC forces your brain's reward system to release dopamine at levels that are way higher than we normally get to experience. So, for an ADHD brain, that sudden surge feels like a religious experience. It's an actual relief valve. Our racing thoughts, they're suddenly slowing down. That hyperactivity that some of us feel, well, that's quieted down too. The mental frustrations that we feel, they melt away. Now, according to a huge data review published in Psychology Today, a massive majority of ADHD adults report that cannabis helps them manage restlessness, physical anxiety, and insomnia. Another secret reason why we use it to escape our prescription side effects. Okay. So let's break that down for a second. Stimulants like Adderall or Concerta, they can turn you into this anxious, non eating, wide awake zombie at 8 p.m. Many ADHDers smoke weed at night simply to kickstart our appetite and override the stimulant induced insomnia so we can actually sleep. Makes sense on paper. It looks like a brilliant idea. Okay. It's a self-made biochemical hack. But here is where the raw truth comes in. Your brain is smart and it does not mind a workaround. So when it discovers that a vape pull or an edible delivers that massive, like effortless dopamine spike, it builds an immediate shortcut. It stops trying to find dopamine through long term rewards like finishing a project or exercising or building positive habits. It wants that immediate cheat code. Over time, you aren't smoking to fix your ADHD anymore. You're smoking because your brain has decided that weed is the only reliable fuel source. I want to take a quick second to pause and to talk about my company, Weekend Wild. It's an outdoor lifestyle brand built around one idea: spend less time on your screens and more time outside. If you head over to weekendwildmi.com, you can check out all the gear that we have. And if you use the code WILDFOCUS15, you can get 15% off your entire purchase. Now, this is the part that really means a lot to me. 10% of all sales goes to supporting the DNR Stepping Stones program, which is a nonprofit that is dedicated to helping individuals and families gain access to the outdoors. So if you want to support the podcast along with the DNR Stepping Stones program, please go to weekendwildmi.com today and use that code WILDFOCUS15. So let's take a moment. Let's get a little nerdy with this because let's talk about what happens when the smoke clears. What is the actual long-term scientific consequence of cannabis on a brain that's already struggling with executive function? Well, the short answer is it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay. So, first thing we have to look at is the dopamine crash. While acute short term use of THC spikes your dopamine, that chronic long term use completely blunts, no pun intended there, your dopamine system. Studies that track long term cannabis users show that over time, the brain regulates its own dopamine production to compensate for the artificial highs. So if you think your ADHD motivation was bad before, regular weed usage makes it significantly worse over time. You develop what's known as a motivational syndrome. You become perfectly comfortable doing absolutely nothing. Your tolerance builds, the dopamine surge shrinks, and your baseline ADHD symptoms, the executive dysfunction, the brain fog, actually intensifies when you aren't high. The second thing we need to look at is that total destruction of working memory. Yeah, it was bad before, but according to a brand new study from of 2026, published by researchers analyzing brain scans of over 1,000 young adults, they found that heavy lifetime cannabis users showed drastically reduced brain activity during a task involving working memory, which is our ability to hold and use information in real time. Again, we already have a terrible working memory. That sticky note of a working memory that falls off all the time, yeah, that imagine that being worse. We walk into a room and we forget why we're there. All right. We lose our wallets while we're holding them. That intensifies over time. So if you add heavy cannabis to that equation, in self reported data from ADHD cannabis users, over 45% explicitly state that weed made their memory significantly worse. You're taking a system that is already running low, running low on RAM and intentionally deleting the operating software. The third thing that we need to look at is the executive function and structural brain alterations. So your frontal lobe handles your executive functions, decision making, planning, and time management and impulse control, all right there in that frontal lobe. In individuals with ADHD, the that frontal lobe is already slow to mature. It is developmentally delayed. Neuroimaging studies show that regular cannabis use, especially if started before the age of 25, while your brain is still cooking, alters that structural connectivity of of the frontal lobe and the rest of your brain. It impairs response inhibition. It also means that you are more impulsive even when you aren't actively stoned. The fourth thing to look at is the counterproductive medication interaction. So, for those of you thinking, well, if I take my ADHD meds in the morning and I smoke at night, I'm balanced. Well, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you, but that is not how it works. Science says you're playing a tug of war on your cardiovascular system and your cognition. So it's not as balanced as you might have hoped. Clinical research published in Attitude magazine shows that mixing your ADHD meds with cannabis creates a significant adverse drug interaction that increase strain on your heart. Okay. Furthermore, cannabis has been proven to actively decrease the clinical efficiency of your stimulant medication. So the weed dampens the exact neural pathways the stimulant is trying to work to wake up. You are paying money for medication just to let a plant cancel all of that out. Now, if you're listening to this right now, sitting on your couch with a half smoked joint in your hand feeling attacked, take a deep breath. I told you I'm not here to judge by any means. I understand why you do it. Life with ADHD can be extremely overwhelming. Your brain is freaking loud. The world is freaking loud, and you just want a moment of peace. But if you want to break the cycle and actually give your brain a fighting chance, we have to replace the cheap chemical shortcut with a sustainable ADHD friendly strategies. So, here are a few things that we can try to do instead. Number one, optimize your legitimate ADHD treatment. A major study on therapeutic cannabis motives revealed that the number one reason ADHD adults use marijuana is untreated or inadequately managed core symptoms. Okay. So if your medication leaves you feeling jittery, anxious, and messes with your sleep, your dose is wrong. So go back to your doctor or your psychiatrist and look into long acting non-stimulant alternatives or adjust your stimulant timing. Don't use a street drug to fix a poorly managed prescription. Number two, the intense dopamine swap. So when you feel the overwhelming urge to smoke out of sheer boredom or executive paralysis, your brain is screaming for a neurochemical shift. So give it one, but make it a healthy shock to your system. This is my favorite one, probably the least favorite of anybody that I've talked to about this, though. It's the cold shock. Take a 2-minute freezing cold shower or a cold plunge. I love those. I bought a cold plunge on Amazon for like 120 bucks and I love to use it. My son loves to use it after football practice. It's a great wake up. Now, if you don't have time to do a full cold plunge, what I do is when I do my morning shower, I will do the shower, but the last 2 minutes, I crank that thing down to freezing, and it helps so much with that motivation in the morning. But that sudden cold exposure triggers a massive prolonged release of dopamine that can last for hours without the cognitive impairment of THC. Now, we can also look at the high intensity bursts, okay? Do 50 jumping jacks, sprint around the block or your house, or blast your favorite song and dance like a fucking lunatic. Yes, upfront sounds silly as hell, but with our brains, we got to get a little creative. And who gives a shit what it looks like to neurotypical individuals? This helps us. That's all that matters. But physical exertion naturally increases the dopamine transporter availability. Okay. So that means you're getting a lot more than what you normally do. Number three, high quality CBD minus that THC. Okay. So if you love the calming physical relaxation of weed, but hate that it kills your memory and focus, look at isolated CBD instead. So there's recent short-term randomized control trials have shown that high quality CBD without THC can offer marginal positive effects on ADHD, restlessness, and anxiety without causing any measurable cognitive decline or memory impairment. So look for pure third party tested CBD isolate to calm your central nervous system without nuking that frontal lobe of yours that is already sensitive. Number four, the 2-week cognitive rebound challenge. Okay, so this is where it can get a little difficult, but stay with me, okay? There is hopeful news from the Washington Post 2026 Neuroscience Roundup. The brain changes from cannabis are not permanent. So, clinical studies tracking adolescents and young adults found that after just 2 weeks of complete abstinence of cannabis, individuals showed measurable, significant rebounds in attention, working memory, and executive function. So, give yourself a 2-week trial, just 14 days. Watch how your brain fog lifts. how your focus naturally sharpens and how your ADHD medication actually starts doing the job that it was hired to fucking do in the first place. All right, friends, we've covered a lot of ground today. We looked at the beautiful trap of the immediate dopamine spike, the harsh reality of long term cognitive decline, and the fact that we are ultimately just trying to calm our brilliant, chaotic minds. So, the raw, unfiltered truth is this: cannabis gives you a loan on focus and calm today, but it charges that massive interest on your executive function tomorrow. And as people with ADHD, our executive function budget is already tight. You deserve a brain that can hold a memory, finish a task, and feel genuine, organic reward without needing to be chemically altered to do so. So please be kind to your mind. It's the only one that you got. And even if it does decide that like color coding your clothes randomly is more important than paying your fucking bills, it's still a beautifully crafted mind. Little bit different than most, but still one that we can learn to use to our own benefit. Now, I appreciate you all for tuning in to Wild Focus. If this episode hit a little close to home, share it with a fellow ADHDer who might need to hear this. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and let's keep chasing focus. All right. Get outside, let the outdoors help regulate that system. All right. I appreciate you all. This is Wild Focus.